There we go. Okay. So, just FYI, the last worksheet is uploaded to Laulima in the resources tab. It's AMA 03, personal development and life advice. So hopefully, yeah, you can find some useful information. Okay. So let's start off. First topic was, can you recommend some books on self-care? Um, I was a little unsure exactly what you meant by self-care, whoever asked the question. So I just kind of went included a whole bunch of different types of books. So the Seven Habits of Highly Effective People is like one of my top all-time favorite books. It's for improving personal effectiveness, building better relationships, that kind of thing. The Eighth Habit. So this book follows on after the Habits of Highly Effective People. And it's called The Eighth Habit from Good to Great. So, going from being an effective person to kind of like trying to aim for bigger things. Right? Yeah, it's I enjoyed the book a lot. The Brain That Changes Itself. So this is something that I like to think about a lot because we often think of ourselves as uh, not changing, but this talks a lot of tells a lot of stories about neuroplasticity, how much the brain can affect itself. Basically, our own attitudes, our own ways of thinking, the thoughts that we tend to hold on to for a long period of time. These things all change who we are as we go on. And the other thing is that the important part about the brain that changes itself is the fact that, you can make a decision in which direction the brain is going to be changing, right? So, um, a lot of the stories are from people with traumatic brain injuries or learning disabilities, things like that. But the applications uh, can be applied to any aspect of your life. You know, there's a there's a principle in there that says the neurons that fire together wire together, and it's it's the principle is that like whenever we're doing an action or two actions together, then those things tend to become linked. So like for example, people that have a morning cigarette with their coffee, a lot of times if they want to quit smoking, they have to quit drinking coffee as well because the coffee and the cigarette neurons are like very closely attached to each other because they tend to occur together a lot. And the same types of things can be applied to any sort of habitual thinking that we have, any sort of habitual reaction. If those things are often together, like for example, maybe there's certain types of people that you're around in your life. And when you're with those types of people, you do certain actions that you wouldn't normally do, right? So maybe sometimes, you might have to stay away from those people in order to stop doing those actions, if that makes sense. Okay. So the brain changes itself great on neuroplasticity, right? Deep Work by Cal Newport, an excellent book about trying to achieve that laser focus, right? Trying to achieve flow, right, in your work. So deep work is about like for writers or for coding, any type of work that requires a lot of concentration, it takes time to get into the zone, if that makes sense, to where you're really being productive, right? And it's very important, I think, especially today, because of like so many distractions that we have in life around us right now. There's so many things that are drawing our attention in different directions. So this is something a good discussion of that. Okay, How to Win Friends and Influence People. This is an old book. I think it was published in the 1930s, and the principles are still applicable, right? The principles of you know, how to talk to people, how not to be objectionable. It's it's classic advice. I mean, it's an old, like I said, it's an old book, so it's written in an older style. but the principles are still accurate. If you don't like that, then I also included Influence by Robert Cialdini. Robert Cialdini is an actual like professor of marketing and consumer psychology, and he does a lot of research about this. But he's one of the few academics who also like tries to take that research and bring it out to everyday people, right? So he has his six persuasions, his six principles of persuasion, and I've gone over those in class. But reading the book will actually like help to integrate that into your brain, right? So the nice thing about reading books, I should say, is that it's one thing to tell you about those principles, six different principles, like right, in the list, but the same concept of the same one of the things I talked about with learning in the AMA too was um, trying to get that piece of information that you want to remember. Let's say it's the six principles of persuasion. It's those six pieces of information you want to remember. Well, the easiest way to remember that is that information linked to a bunch of different thoughts and ideas in your head, right? Oh, this is like that. These metaphorical comparisons between different ideas, right? So reading a book allows you to do that because they go through things slowly, they go through things in a detailed manner, and you have time to reflect on those ideas, right? And so the, reading a book, even if you just all you take out of it is the six principles, that's a great book. So for those of you who are interested in trading, um, like active trading on the market, Flash Boys by Michael Lewis is an essential book. It's about the world of high frequency trading and algorithmic trading. And, you know, if you ever try to do day trading, you are at a disadvantage compared to these people. I mean, they have like, not, it's not just about they have the algorithms that will trade, right? They are literally just like skimming money off the top of the market. They're out of the market by the end of every day. They have no positions at the end of the day, right? And they also buy the best physical real estate, the best physical real estate for their digital connection to the market, right? So they're literally, there's a giant server farm in New Jersey, right across the river from New York, the New York Stock Exchange, right? And where your server is in that building, the closer it is to the exit of the building, the more expensive it is, right? Because you're talking about like milliseconds, fractions of a millisecond of advantage that you can have because those fractions of a millisecond give you temporal advantage over your competitors, right? And you can kind of cut the market in a little faster than other people. Right? So the the point is to learn about the powers out there that are out there, right? That are working against you if you do want to do some sort of action. Complexity, a guided tour by Melanie Mitchell. So I talk a lot about, I kind of allude to it a lot about systems thinking and thinking about the world in terms of systems and interactive systems, subsystems, super systems, how these things are all kind of related. Um, and this has been an area of science that's been growing a lot since like the 80s with chaos theory and complexity theory. So complexity theory is just as you think, if you think of the word complexity, right? So a complexity and complicated are very different things. So complicated might be something like a refrigerator or a microwave, right? It's complicated, but it's something that you can figure out, right? It's something that you can look at all the individual parts and figure out what they do, and a person can actually troubleshoot it and figure it and fix it. Complex systems, complex adaptive systems, as people call them, are usually living organisms, and especially people and systems of people. These things are so complex, so they have so many moving parts, at so many degrees of freedom that it's basically impossible to predict uh, to associate cause and effect, right? So the further apart cause and effect are, the more complex. So cause and effect, like your microwave goes down. Cause and effect. There's a little bit of a gap of knowledge between the cause and effect, depending on your expertise too, right? But that gap becomes impossibly large with complexity. Okay, and so this is a great this Melanie Mitchell. She's a professor at the Santa Fe Institute. If you've never heard of the Santa Fe Institute, definitely check them out online. They're really groundbreaking researchers over at the Santa Fe Institute. So even people that are like really excellent researchers, like our Steve Vargo, who was a marketing professor here, he's like highly cited, one of the most highly cited people in marketing. Even him, he's like, well, I wish that I could get a job at the Santa Fe Institute someday, right? Next book, Musashi by Eiji Yoshikawa. This book is a historical fiction based off of Miyamoto Musashi, right? And Miyamoto Musashi, in case you don't know, he wrote the Book of Five Rings. It's a book about sword fighting. It's sort of like Japan's equivalent to the Art of War, but instead of about war scale fighting, it's about more like personal battles with another person with swords, right? And this Musashi is just a great book. I think it's very good for men, especially, right? Because um, when Musashi is young, he's very headstrong. Everything is a battle to him. Like just like making eye contact with another sword fighter. Right? Whoever breaks eye contact first is the loser of the battle. Right? So, but as he grows older and he fights a lot more battles, he kind of like becomes more um, fluid and less hard in his life. If that makes sense. So I think the last book is the way of the boy, but it's about like acting without malice, right? But acting in a way that you can defend yourself. Right? Next book, the Checklist Manifesto. Checklist Manifesto is just this. It's made by a doctor. The book, the doctors, because you don't know, they have a lot of checklists that they have to go through, right? When they're trying to assess conditions, right? So when a person gives you a list of symptoms that they're having, then you go through this checklist. You say, okay, this checklist, and then you check it against your medical guide, and you can diagnose from there, right? And checklists are absolutely essential in these types of work because even if you've done the same task, 1,000 times, the human mind is probabilistic. So just keep that in mind. The human mind is probabilistic. That means that sometimes you forget things, sometimes you remember things, right? It doesn't matter how frequently you've done those things, the human mind is probabilistic. Even if the probability is low in these types of situations where it's a life or death situation, like in aircraft maintenance or in this, what's it called, in medicine, that probability of you making that type of error is result in, the death of people, right? So the checklist manifesto kind of talks about that and how it's just a good way to kind of like live your life having checklists, right? So that you don't forget things. Very easy. Okay, Mastery by Robert Greene. So I've recommended several books by Robert Greene. He's my favorite author for sure. So Mastery is about finding a niche for yourself, right? Finding a niche where you can learn how to deliver unique value, right? So yeah, it talks about the emphasis on patience, focus, and practice, right? Um, and it gives you a lot of examples of people who figured out, unique ways of delivering value to the world. Um, like, for example, people that might be experts in origami. It turns out that origami, the skill of like being able to figure out how to fold things in a certain way, is also related to satellites, for example, right? So satellites, everything that goes up in space has to fit in this little tiny tube, right? The rocket that goes up in space. And if you have something that has to be bigger than that little tiny tube, you have to figure out a way of folding it down into a much smaller space, and then it expands once it's in space, right? Like the James Webb Telescope, right? But the point is that there are ways of combining the different aspects of yourself into something that creates unique value, right? So that you yourself are kind of indispensable. Okay. Okay. So those books are. I have a lot more if you ever want to, but so those books are basically about self improvement. The next step about self help is this protect yourself aspect. So just a reminder that you know in self help or self care, whatever you want to call it, it's not just about improving yourself. It's also sometimes about protecting yourself from other people who may take advantage of you. So I have a few books about power, manipulation, and influence that, um, you know, will help to protect you from those sort of nefarious actors. So the first book is again that I have a lot of Robert Greene here. So it's the 33 Strategies of War by Robert Greene. Um, so he talks about different tactics in battle. So Robert Greene is a historian by in by trade, but so in this book he talks about a lot of different battles, historical battles, and kind of like draws out the principles behind what caused the results of those battles. And it also relates it a lot to power politics and royal courts and manipulation, and it's a lot of things that can be applied in your own personal life. So these things might be about battle, but we're all fighting different battles at different conflicts. So, an excellent book. Related to that, the 48 Laws of Power. The 48 Laws of Power is mostly derived from politics, or from the royal court politics specifically, because he's a historian. Actually, not just royal court politics, but also like presidential politics. That like how certain presidents got people to um, disseminate information faster or things like that, right? So yeah, so this talks about a bunch of like manipulative tactics that can help you in life, and that hopefully can help to raise the raise your defenses, right? When there are people out there that don't mean you harm, right? So 48 Laws of Power, excellent book. The Mystery Method. I don't know if anybody's heard of this, but it's a book by a pickup artist. He's talking about how to pick up women, and one of the reasons why I recommend this book is because, again, for the women out there, it's very important to kind of like recognize these manipulative tactics, um, and to protect yourself from it, right? So, building on that, so The Art of Seduction, another book by Robert Greene. So this uh, seduction in this sense is more than it's more than just um, romantic seduction, although this romantic seduction is a part of it, right? But it's any sort of an attempt to influence you by like clouding your judgment, right? Like a Machiavellian approach, right? To trying to change your behavior, right? So the art of seduction, again, it's not broken up into like 33 principles or 48 laws, right? But it does break it down into different types of people, different types of seduction tactics that are often used by different types of people. And it's also just a great book to learn about how to protect yourself from that influence that people might want your job, people might want to get a promotion over you, people might want to get your money, people might want to take advantage of you in a relationship, whether it be a personal relationship or I mean a friendly relationship or a romantic relationship. So um, this is kind of will help you identify those, right? And then the laws of human nature. This is just a little bit more a broader approach to thinking about people and understanding why people act the way that they act. Um, yeah. So I love Robert Greene. Any of his books really are just okay. Non-denominational spirituality. Okay, so the Four Agreements by Don Miguel Ruiz. Very excellent book about just simple life techniques. So the Four Agreements, I wrote them right here. Be impeccable with your word. Don't take anything personally. Don't make assumptions. Always do your best. Very simple, straightforward life advice, right? Um, but I think it's essential life advice, right? Now it's hard to kind of like adhere to all these four agreements all the time, but um, if you can adhere to these, your life will be much much better, right? Don't take anything personally. It's a hard one and one that a lot of people don't agree with, but just keep in mind that when people say something to you and you decide to take it personally, it's not about you. It's about them, right? When they say something, it's deriving from their own thoughts, their own assumptions about what they who they think you are. You know, they only have certain bits of information about you to kind of form an opinion about you, right? And they fill in the gaps of those information with their own thoughts and assumptions, right? So that's one of the reasons why it's never good to take it, right? Okay, let's see what else. Okay, yeah. So, Living Buddha, Living Christ by Thich Nhat Hanh. Um, very interesting book about the parallels between Buddhist and Christian teaching, and with some other practical lessons of life. Right? It's a great book just to kind of like reflect on the bigger things, right? Shambhala, the Sacred Path of the Warrior. So I would definitely recommend this to men. I mean, definitely for women as well. They can read this, right? But for men especially, I think it's definitely important to live your life with courage, right? Passion, and purpose. So this is a great book for that, right? Just meditations basically on life and how to try to achieve that kind of warrior mindset, which I think is very important. If you're into meditation, The Attention Revolution by Alan Wallace is a deep dive into the uh, the science of meditation and how it can help you to improve your attention span, right? And this is kind of related to that concept of deep work that I talked about before. You know, trying to get into the zone uh, to really be productive. Once you're in that zone, that's when you're going to be coming up with great ideas. Okay, sports and diet. So I really like these books. You know, the paleo diet. This is what started the fad. I'm not sure how much you guys know about it, but the paleo diet or the paleo diet for athletes by Lauren Cordain. Um, so both of the books are excellent about talking about what your body really needs to function at its best, right? Maybe you're a vegan or vegetarian. Okay, that's fine. But the paleo diet actually, you know, includes a lot of meat. It's pretty straightforward. Lean meat, fresh vegetables, and staying away from processed carbohydrates, right? Pretty straightforward. Okay. Born to Run by Christopher McDougall. I didn't, I don't know where I picked up. I think I picked up this book at a um, used bookstore, and it just seemed kind of interesting at first. So, and then when I read it, it's just like it's just an interesting read, right? There's a bunch of interesting characters in there. Um, but it's learning about how these people from Mexico that run, that do these like ultra marathons, and just run barefoot basically. They run, well, not barefoot. They run on these little sandals, but they run for like, you know, 50 miles, 100 miles, something ridiculous, right? And yeah, it's a great book about learning about our evolutionary physiology, what how we kind of got the bodies that we have today. Okay, what are some tips on self improvement? Okay, so first, so this is related to that idea of accept and act, right? So one of the things that the first step to self-improvement is acceptance, right? So acceptance is about is about being okay with everything around you, right? Being okay with the life that's around you, right? So be honest with yourself about where you are in life. No judgment, just a sober assessment, almost like that the resource based view that we talked about when we were looking at a firm. You know, just look at your own resources, assess those resources in sort of like an academic style, and then make a plan for it, right? Accept and act, right? And I really love this quote by David Graeber, right? It says, value emerges in action. It's the process by which a person's invisible potency, their capacity to act, is transformed into concrete, perceptible forms, right? So this, I think, is like this idea that value emerges in action is just so,
Oh,
it's so profound because, um, you know, action, the aspect of action is just, well, let's just say this, okay? That not doing anything is a decision, okay? Not doing anything is a decision. And just as FYI, think about the root of the word decision. It means to cut off, right? So when you make a decision, you're cutting off different possibilities, future possibilities of life, right? So when you make a decision, when you fail to make a decision, that in itself is a decision. When you fail to make an action, that in itself is an action. And those things, that lack of action means that the world is changing you. The world is working on you rather than you working on the world around you, right? So if you want to improve yourself, then obviously action is key, right? You have to make a plan, accept, accept the world around you, make a plan to improve the world, and then improve your world, and then make an action to do that. And the other thing is, I would like to say is that generally speaking, this idea of self improvement. So the mere act of asking this, I think, is a good sign, right? The mere act of saying, what are some tips on self improvement, or thinking about the idea of self improvement, that means that you are oriented towards self improvement, right? But the, the thing is, a lot of people who think this way can tend to judge themselves in a harsh manner, right? So I would definitely caution you against judging yourself, right? So that's why I say when acceptance is key. Acceptance is um, recognizing reality for what it is without judging, right? That's acceptance. So don't judge yourself too harshly. Don't um, don't use social media as a barometer of your own success, right? Because people are only giving you like tiny pieces of their life. They're only giving you those like very good pictures, right? And just to recognize that sometimes, life, it takes a lot of work, right? Improving yourself takes a lot of work. There's a concept of, I don't know if you guys have heard this, but the 10,000 hours to mastery, 10,000 hours, um, is, is about what's required to master a task, right? So it's about 5 hours or 5 years at 8 hours a day, right? 5 days a week. So you average about 2,000 hours of work per year. Um, so yeah, that's about 5 years to mastery. And it takes time. So that ambition, that desire to improve ourselves, a lot of times we judge ourselves for not improving fast enough. But just put it in perspective, right? That 10,000 hours is very important. Okay. And if you ever feel stuck, so again, the type of people who desire self improvement tend to be the type of people who judge themselves a little bit too harshly because they want something bigger and better. So they tend to also get stuck, right? So reach out to have a support network, reach out to them, try to recognize when you are stuck in, maybe dissatisfaction with yourself, a friend, therapist. You can call me if you feel, bad thoughts, right? Uh, I've been there, so I can understand where you guys are coming from. So yeah, so if you ever need to call me, my slides are in all my, or my numbers in all my slides. So yeah, okay. So number three, how can I feel okay without not having it all planned out? No serious job set up, not getting a higher degree, etc. This is perfectly fine, right? You guys are all young. You have a lot of life ahead of you. So it's okay to enjoy your youth. It's okay, right? It's okay to have a not serious job right when you get out of college, right? So if you listen to the AMA number two, I've had multiple careers in my life, right? I didn't have everything planned out when I was younger. I graduated with a bachelor's degree, right? I had no plan to get a master's degree. Um, I started work. My first job was through an employment agency, Manpower. Incidentally, I recommended these as methods of getting into a job. Manpower is a big employment agency. Deco is a big employment agency. And there's also another big employment agency that I recommended on LinkedIn recently that focuses on Hawaii specifically. But these employment agencies are good places to get temporary work. Usually you get hired as a temporary, so almost like an intern, but you're getting paid full time pay. And if you're a good worker, then the company will hire you, right? They need good people, so it's a good way to get your foot in the door, so to speak. Okay, yeah. So I did a lot of stuff um, when I was younger. So like I said, I didn't have everything planned out. When I first graduated, I had the biology degree. I worked for some chemistry stuff, and I had pretty much my life kind of like planned. It planned out. Um, so my girlfriend at the time was living in. She graduated a year before me. She was living in D.C. and she had gotten a job with I think Lockheed Martin. Um, and so it seemed like my life was pretty much planned out at that point, right? So I was going to go into. I was very interested in something called chemical ecology, which is sort of like how plants and insects interact. And in professional terms, I like think the most frequent thing they go into is like something like integrated pest management, which is related to agricultural science. So that was sort of my idea of what I was going to do. But I, I kind of saw the people that were working in that industry, and I just didn't see myself as one of them. So I think the thing is that like when you're young, when you're just graduating, it's okay to not have an idea exactly what you're going to do because the idea of what you're going to do doesn't necessarily mesh with reality, right? So you might have this like fantasy vision of the way that the work that you're going to be doing once you get into the dream job, right? But when you're actually doing it, it's going to be very different, right? So you don't have enough knowledge right now at you know 22, 23, whatever it is, that to really know what the jobs are going to entail, right? And once you're in those jobs and you realize that maybe this is not the one for you, it's okay. So not right now is a good time to be able to be flexible in your career, right? It's okay to kind of like jump around a little bit from time to time, but um, yeah. So don't rush into it. Don't take forever, obviously, but no need to rush. Okay, next question. What are some relationship red flags? Personal, romantic, professional, or work? So, okay, personal. Um, if people only call you when they need you, there's a song or there's a phrase. It says a friend in need is a friend indeed. I don't know if you guys have heard that, but a friend in need is a friend indeed. So if someone only talk to you because they need something, then they're not a friend, right? You are just a resource for them, right? Uh, People that don't apologize or take responsibility, bad people to be around, right? People that don't apologize or take responsibility, right? There's, uh, I've seen this before. You know, a lot of people that just can't take responsibility for the things that they do or say, right? And they don't recognize any fault coming from them. So that type of thing is definitely ground for toxic relationship, right? Because that person is never gonna. I've seen it happens to people like even late in life. You get this kind of like thought pattern of like always deflecting blame from yourself, and it just kind of like perpetuates in life with some people, right? Some people may learn from it, but I don't know. It seems like a lot of people don't. Also, um, people that lie, yeah. I mean, hopefully this is an easy one, right? People that lie or make things up, or always talk about themselves, don't um, listen to you. That's definitely a bad. It's like narcissists, basically. You know, they're focused on themselves. They're focused on how your relationship improves their own social standing. Oftentimes, they're not interested in you as people, right? Yeah, mutual gossip. I don't know how people feel about gossip. I'm sort of anti-gossip. So people that gossip about other friends of yours, right? You have other friends, and then that one friend is bad mouthing your other friends, and it puts you in a bad position. Right? Usually, those people are, more of that self-seeking behavior. Um, they're looking at the relationship as instrumental rather than uh, for the value that you held as. Does that make sense? So that basically means that you are, again, you're a resource for them, and that's it, not a person. Oh, people that make you feel guilty for setting boundaries. Yeah. So this is a very important, right? So a lot of times people, younger people, I think especially, tend to kind of like, uh, if you say if you're going to go out, right, and or if your friend wants to go out and you say you can't, right, and they make you try to make you feel bad about it because you say you can't go out, but maybe you have a final exam. So they tell you that you can't, that you have to come out with them, and they're trying to make you feel guilty. That's not. I don't think that's good friendship behavior. Now, sometimes it is good friendship behavior because sometimes that person is really looking out for you. They know that you're stressed out and you need some sort of relaxation or relief. But for the most part, if they're like really trying to guilt trip you into this stuff, then yeah, that's kind of like red flag behavior. So um, dismissing your feelings. Well, also, like I would say, encouraging bad behavior. So I saw this a lot when I was in the fraternity, right? So when I was in a fraternity, like the people really try to cer- encourage people to act crazy, right? Because I think it makes them feel better, if that makes sense, right? It makes them feel like less of a mess by watching other people do something crazy, right? So watch out for that type of person as well. Controlling, uh, obviously that's kind of very that's related to that idea of like making you feel guilty of thinking about yourself, right? Jealousy or competitiveness, right? Competitiveness when you succeed. So if you let's say you get a job, right? And you get a great job and you tell your friend and your friend is barely holding back their disgust, right? Or their jealousy. Um, that's not a good friend, right? A good friend wants to see you succeed. A good friend doesn't want to one up you, right? So that's definitely a red flag. Oh, burning bridges with other friends. That's a very big red flag. So there's a lot of people out there that are hyper, um, I think hyper aware of slights or they very much apply like negative uh, motivations to other people and are very quick to kind of like burn bridges with other friends. And that's a very dangerous type of person to be around because you will have to be basically perfect to be their friend in perpetuity, right? Unless they figure out that it's not always about them, not to take things personally, one of the four agreements, right? Unless they figure that out, then that's a bad friend. Okay. Okay. Romantic red flag. Controlling again. Controlling or extreme jealousy. Very bad, right? You should be allowed to be yourself. You should be allowed to be yourself without worrying about your partner, whatever it is, being overly worried about you, right? Because a good relationship is based off of trust. If you don't have trust, then um, that's what the controlling behavior or jealousy. It's a lack of trust, right? And it's usually a lack of trust because those people are more likely to engage in those behaviors themselves. Right? So you see this a lot where people guard against the behavior that they know that they do, right? So yeah. So if romantic partner avoids your friends and family, red flag, right? Red flag. If they talk shit about your friends, right? If they talk shit about your family, or they won't talk to your family, or your family hates them, right? That is a red flag, right? Well, okay. So I will say that not everybody gets to choose their family. So if they if they're working off your energy towards your family, that's okay, right? Like maybe you have a bad relationship with your dad, as an example, right? If they're just working off that energy, that's fine. But if having maintaining a relationship with someone means that it's going to deteriorate other relationships, whether those would be with friends or family, I think definitely a red flag. Yeah, playing the victim, very big red flag. Not listening to you. So like this is about like if you have insecurities or they kind of like again, this is that competitive behavior. So competitive behavior in any type of relationship, whether it be with friends or family or with romantic or with friends, being competitive is not it's okay to a certain extent, but um, if they feel bad that you're succeeding, that you're they feel bad because you make them look like they're not succeeding as much as they could, then that's a bad thing, right? They should be encouraging you to succeed, not holding you back. Gaslighting. This is a common thing these days, gaslighting, right? So if someone's gaslighting you, trying to tell you that you don't see what the things that are happening with your own eyes, right? Then major red flag, right? Secrets, hiding major aspects of the life, red flag. Financial irresponsibility, big red flag, right? Because if you get married to somebody who is financially irresponsible, right, you assume their debt. You're kind of like on the hook for their debt and their credit, right? So if you want to ever buy a house, you know, and not pay a crazy interest rate, or when this is not the type of person you want to be with, right? Professional work, gossip. So again, I talked about gossip. Gossip at work I mean, to a certain extent, it's okay. So let's say you have an actual bad coworker talking about those things, how it's affecting your work life. Like maybe a lot of their work is falling on your plate. That's okay, right? What's not okay is like when people start talking about like personal characteristics or people's personal lives and things like that, and it ends up forming cliques and stuff like inside the office. It's like high school. It's just this stuff is just it's not good. It's not a good working environment, right? Yeah. So other red flag, stealing your time. I've talked about this, right? So if someone is like constantly they call you after work, not good, right? You have your personal space is your personal space, right? Unless it's an emergency and you've established in advance that they can contact you after work in emergencies, they should not, right? So like for example, when I was a facility manager I would have to respond to emergencies from time to time because let's say, our intrusion detection system, which just the alarm goes off, right? It says that somebody's breaking in. Okay, yeah, I got to do something about that, right? But for the most part, you know, most jobs don't require this kind of like after hours um, responses, right? It can wait until the next day. So they can steal your time like that. They can steal your time by asking you to stay late for something without paying you. They can steal your time by asking you to come in on a weekend and paying you regular salary rather than time and a half. Happens a lot. Or they try to make you work more than 40 hours a week and then offer you comp time instead of overtime. That's a red flag, right? Because overtime pay is 1.5 times, right? Comp time is just time off, right? It's equivalent to your 40 hours, right? So if they give you comp time, it should be 1.5 hours of comp time for every hour of overtime you put in. But that's not the way they do it. Okay. Yeah, absurdly short deadlines. If somebody walks up to you the first time you walk into the office or as you're leaving the office, those are times when you should not be being bombarded by a boss. Okay. Because when you first walk into the office, you got to set up your office, you got to check your emails, you got to do whatever it is that you're kind of like warm up for the day, right? But if someone's bombarding you the second you walk into the office, that's a bad sign. And the same with it with on your way out, right? If you're on your way out, that's because your day is over, right? Your work day is over. You're no longer obligated to perform any work. And if they're like trying to engage you in work conversations on your way out the door, then that's stealing your time, right? Micromanaging. The whole point that you hire employees is so that they can do work. They can so that you can divide and conquer, right? You split the work up into smaller chunks. You're responsible for one part. Your boss is responsible for a different part, right? If they are micromanaging you, that's like completely defeating the purpose of hiring them, right? And it's because they don't trust, right? Good work relationships, like with any other relationships, need to be built on a degree of trust, right? Micromanaging tells me that they don't trust, right? Passive aggressive communication and no actionable feedback. Actually, just a lack of feedback in general is bad, right? So generally speaking, feedback should be continuous, right? In most jobs, you're required to give a feedback to your employees once or twice a year, something like that. Official, like written feedback, right? But those should not be the only times that your boss gives you feedback, right? You let's say you're doing something wrong. You didn't know that you're doing something wrong. You've been doing it wrong for 6 months, and then all of a sudden your boss brings up on you, oh, you're not meeting expectations, right? Now you gotta like uh catch up for the next 6 months of the year, right? Um, it's it's bad. Uh, it should be like continuous. You make a mistake one time, someone tells you about it, and then you can improve, right? Continuous feedback is important, right? So if not giving you actionable feedback on a reasonable time frame, then you need to oh, okay. Favoritism. Obviously, this is bad because a lot of times the favorite is not you, although sometimes it's you. In which case, favoritism might be good for you. But favoritism is generally not good because you have that like boys club type thing or girls club. I guess you could have. I've never seen them, but I've seen the boys club where they kind of like maybe because I was in the military and the military tends to be much more male dominated field, so you have a lot more of that boys club atmosphere there. But yeah, a lot of times you find these like little cliques that form because of through favoritism, and a lot of times it's because those people like what are they, the brown noses, right? The type of people that they find out. Let's say that the boss likes the Steelers, right? And so they're always talking about the Steelers to the boss, and the boss likes to talk about that stuff. So then that person becomes like the favorite, even though they might suck at their job, right? Fear tactics. or threats, you don't need that, right? That again, that comes from a lack of trust and a lack of respect. And same with this hostility relationship. Yeah. Looking back, is there anything you wish you had done differently after grad? So I enlisted in the Air Force. I think if I had gone back, I probably would have become an officer instead. It's difficult to say if I made the wrong choice because the choices that I made led me to where I am now. But yeah, I definitely wouldn't mind having the additional pay with the officers. Yet. Next question: Do you feel missed out on enjoying dumb young people stuff in your 20s? No, I did plenty of stuff. I did plenty of stuff, dumb stuff in my 20s and probably 30s. So, you guys really, I mean, yeah, you don't know. So, I think one of the things that I never got to do that I did want to do, I wanted to hike Mauna Loa. I used to hike a lot, and like I've hiked Mount Fuji a few times, and I really wanted to do Mauna Loa, but it's it's sort of like logistically difficult to do, right? You got to plan for it. It's a multi-day hike. You got to get a bunch of gear that you need. It's just not something I could do realistically in life with kids and stuff, right? So I guess my recommendation is like if you have a bucket list, you know, at your age, at 22, 23, it seems like there's like an ocean of time in front of you, right? But there is not. So if you have a bucket list, try to make actual plans to get those things done, right? One of the things I always wanted to do was to visit Angkor Wat. I used to be a History Channel nerd back in the History Channel. I used to talk about history instead of reality shows. But one of the things that they would often show on the History Channel was documentaries about Angkor Wat or things like that, right? So one of the things I really want to do was go there, and I did it. So yeah, do it. What are your thoughts of the importance of traveling? Yes, traveling is essential. I definitely recommend you travel as much as you can. It's a great way to kind of like broaden your perspective on the world around you and on life in general, right? It helps you realize like how similar everybody really is. Um, that's one of the things that struck me the most. You know, a lot of things times people think about the differences between cultures and they focus on those differences. But one of the things I remember seeing so much is like how similar everything was um, traveling all over the globe. So I've listed some of the places I've been to: Mexico, Canada, the Bahamas, Belize, Guatemala, Japan, Vietnam, Singapore, Cambodia, China, Thailand, the Philippines, Malaysia, Micronesia, Qatar, Germany, France, Switzerland, Belgium, Luxembourg, Czech Republic, Austria, the Netherlands, and I think that's it. But I just noticed how similar it is, right, in different places, right? So I think traveling is great. And the other thing that you learn from traveling is that not everybody's American and English speaking, right? The vast majority of the world is not American and English speaking, so it's a great thing to do. Do you have financial advice you wish you followed earlier in life? Yeah. So one thing I would say is definitely invest early. Invest in your retirement goals, right? Get a Roth IRA and start putting money into it, a little bit and automate it, right? So make sure you put in, it could be even like $100 a month, right? Put in $100 a month into your Roth IRA. You'll be much better off than you would be if you waited 10 years, right? The earlier you put that money in, the bigger the benefit is going to be. Guaranteed, okay? Guaranteed. Put money in and automate it, right? Make it automatic. Make that money not a part of your everyday budget. So, and just in general, just automate as much of your finances as possible. So, um, automate your payments, automate your savings, automate your retirement savings, regular savings, emergency savings, house savings, automate all that stuff, right? And just send a little bit of money into those different pots, right? Start early and automate it, and then just live your life based off of the money that you do have, right? You still have plenty of time to have fun and enjoy your life and do all those other things. The other thing I would think about is think about if you really need a car or not. So, unless you, so like Eric here, he's got a business sort of built around cars. So that is different, right? But for the vast majority of us who are not, do not have like some sort of livelihood tied up to cars, a car is really a luxury that you might not need. Uh, so, yeah, gas, insurance, maintenance, all this stuff really adds up, really fast. If you do want a car and you want a new car, one of the things I recommend is a lease. Hawaii is a great place for leasing cars, right? Because most cars come with a mileage limit, usually 10,000 or 12,000 miles per year that you can use on a lease. And in Hawaii, it's very easy to stay under those numbers, right? Because you just don't need to drive that far all the time, right? I leased a car and had a 12,000 mile year lease in Hawaii, and I had 3 year lease, 36,000 miles that I could use on it, and I used probably I don't know 20,000 miles, something like that. It wasn't much. It was not even close to um, the full amount that I could use, right? So that's just from living in Hawaii. Like your average commute, even a long commute, is like 10 miles. So yeah, if you do want a car, consider leasing. One of the great things about leasing is not just is the price, right? So generally speaking, if you have a decent credit score, your lease will be half or less the monthly payment as a payment on a purchase price, right? And the other nice thing about a lease is you always have a new car. Every 3 years, the lease ends, right? So you have a new car every 3 years. The only maintenance you have to worry about are the maintenance issues with a new car. Oil change, right? Rotate your tires, check your air pressure, check your fluids, that kind of thing. Change your air filter. That's it, right? That's really it. Um, so, and you get a new car every 3 years, right? And your monthly premium is about half as much as you would pay for a new car, right? So, lease is definitely a good consideration. Oh, and by the way, if you do lease a car, do not get the maintenance package, right? I paid for the maintenance package because I was an idiot. The maintenance package is always going to be more expensive than um, just paying out of pocket, right? Don't pay for the maintenance package. Usually it's just the oil changes uh, and tire rotations. But again, it's going to be cheaper if you just pay for it yourself. The only reason they're selling it to you is because they want to money. Okay. What would you say about career choices, work decisions made in your 20s? The biggest thing I think I learned about is don't stay in a toxic work environment. If you're in a toxic work environment, especially early in your career, it's okay. It's much more okay to um, leave and be active. Yeah, bust the life. Yeah, I agree. It's much more acceptable to be active in your career, as in actively moving from one place to another, right? Um, so if you don't like your boss, if you don't like your work environment, if you don't like your coworkers, just get out of it. Okay, find a new boss. It's not worth it. Find a new company. Any advice you give on dating and relationships in your 20s? Okay, so my brother met his first wife. Mentioned, we call it. I said first wife, right? He met his first wife on Tinder. He met her, he got her pregnant, and had two kids with her actually. And it did not work out because it was a Tinder match. It was not a match based off of like real deep compatibility. Right? So don't try to meet your spouse on Tinder, or if there's a similar app, I don't know. Um, it's not a good place to meet people. Right? That hookup environment, Tinder or bars, and, that type of hookup environment is not really conducive towards long-term relationships. Not to say it's impossible, but it's just unhealthy. Second, yeah, don't feel trapped in a relationship if you're not comfortable, right? So I almost married my college girlfriend, but deep down, I think I mentioned this earlier. I felt like my life was like I could see the trajectory of my life and exactly everything that was going to happen. I just didn't. Um, it wasn't what I had envisioned. I think when I was young. And so it was difficult at the time of breaking up, but I ended up breaking up with her, and then I joined the military, and then now I am where I am. So if I hadn't have done that, I probably would have been living in DC, working at the EPA or think tank or something like that. I'm not really sure. It's hard to say what I would have been doing, but it definitely would not be. I would not be living for sure. Any recommendations on when a good time to have kids? I don't think there's any perfect time. I waited until my mid 30s, so my son was born just a few weeks after my 36th birthday, and I think I was ready earlier, but it's not just the thing that you have to realize. You might have a goal time when you think that you might want to have kids, but having kids is a two-person decision, right? It's not just about your plan; it's about someone else's plan as well, right? So you got to wait until you're with the right person and you both agree that it's the time to do that, right? So, um, yeah. So my son was born when I was 36, just after I turned 36, and that was a good time for me, right? I think it's definitely good to wait until you're 30, because then you're a little bit more financially stable. You can, if you want to consider sending you into like a private school or something, that's pretty much out of reach when you're younger. You have a little bit more options, right? Especially if you're not planning to have more than like maybe three kids, right? Three or four kids. I'm sure more people might be leaning towards one or two, but if you are planning to have three or four, you know, that's fine. Yeah. Okay. What's the single best piece of advice for new dads? I really like this question. So my first piece of advice is to talk to other recent dads, other people who recently became dads, who recently had kids, and ask them and talk to them about their technique, right? Because our first inclination might be to talk to our parents, right? But our parents raised children at a very different time, right? There's a lot more tools and products available, and the market is always fluctuating, right? You're always churning, new things coming out, right? So talk to a new parent, and talk to them about what they did, right? Because they'll be able to give you like recommendations on specific products, right? So what baby monitor did you use? What crib did you use? What I don't know, what are your favorite types of diapers? All these like little specific things that your parents are not going to be able to know because they had kids, you know, decades ago, right? So they're not going to know the up and up on what's the best new made baby monitor, what's the best new stroller or whatever going on, right? So they might be able to give you some general advice, but you need that specific advice. You need actionable information, right, to work on. But for products, I have a few specific ones, right? So nose Frida. Nose Frida. So one thing you might not realize is that babies cannot blow their nose. So if they have congestion, they're just congested. They cannot expel that excess mucus, right? So the nose Frida is a way of like dealing with that, right? It's like a little, you just look it up, right? If you want. But it's definitely a good tool for that. And yeah, again, it's one of those things you would never think that you would need until you have it, right? An adjustable stroller. So adjustable stroller means that you can put one or two seats in it. So this is planning ahead for kid number two in case you do choose to do it. So I got the Baby Jogger City Select as my second stroller, which it was my first because it's adjustable. You can go to one seat, two seats, and back and forth, and different, all sorts of different configurations. And it's great. It's a great stroller. So, and it's not too big. It's smaller than my original stroller, right? So, adjustable stroller was great, and then it will save you money because you wouldn't have to buy a second stroller if you have a second kid, right? And strollers are not cheap. You know, $400, $700. It could be less. You can get cheaper ones, but they get expensive quickly. Oh, and the Freedom Mom postpartum recovery kit. So if the mom gives birth, her body has been ravaged basically, and it needs recovery. And sometimes the hospital doesn't give you everything you need when you're at home. You know, you get 2 days, 48 hours in the hospital, but you know, there's a lot of recovery that occurs after that. So if a mom needs something, this postpartum recovery kit is essential. Just look at the stuff that's in there. You'll realize that it's absolutely essential. Um, for specifics, so I definitely recommend Queen or Tripler if you can access Queen or access Tripler, right? I don't recommend Capiolani. Capiolani is like a baby factory, so you're gonna have a much more business-like transactional experience at Capiolani than you will at Queen or Tripler, right? So Queens has a much smaller maternity section, but because it's so much smaller, you're going to get a lot more personal. Okay, and my daughter was born at Queens, so we had great experience, and my son was born in Chicago. So yeah, great experiences at both locations. And I've heard from people that have had babies at Queens that it was not ideal. Okay, and also our OBGYN recommended Queens for that specific. So don't go to Capilani, go to Queens. Okay, what do I like most about teaching? So I think that I have a fairly unique uh, framework for understanding reality, and I think that I will enjoy sharing that. Right, so teaching gives me the opportunity to share that, and I think hopefully people listen to what I say and kind of like are able to take those things out into the world and then kind of perpetuate the mentality that I kind of preach and make the world a better place. Right. So hopefully I'm able to make you guys you know, stronger and more confident market. Last question. What are some tips on staying connected to college friends when everyone's going to different places on graduation? So the best tip that I can give you when you don't have kids and you don't have any other social obligations is visit your friends, right? I visited my friends in a bunch of different places, mostly Los Angeles, um, Washington D.C., and New York City, right, or Boston. All those locations. So visiting your friends is a great place, great opportunity. You know, I talked about traveling internationally, but you know, there's a lot of great places in the States too, right? You can go into New York City or Boston or DC, Los Angeles. Those are great places to visit. You got great food, great nightlife, and you get a guided tour, a guaranteed guided tour, and your friend, right? They'll show you all the hot spots, exactly where you want to go. So yeah, so prioritize those friendships, visit those people while you have the opportunity to do so, and that's a great way to leverage those friendships and make sure that they continue for years to come. Because once you have kids, then before you have kids, the world is yours. Okay, that's all I got for today. I think there's a few other questions, just kind of like assorted questions that I'll answer a different one. But unless you guys have anything else, I'll close my document. Bid you all a good night.
Thanks,
Yeah,
brother Shells. You have a
Pastor.
good
Have a
one
good
too.
night.
Yeah. Hey, thanks for showing up.
No, it's good. Me, yeah, no, that was fuck, dude. Last one, huh?
No, there's one more.
Oh, there's one more. Oh, okay, word. Yeah, I'm cool with that. What are
Probably
we
be
sipping
the
on tonight?
Johnny Walker,
Oh, Johnny Walker.
Johnny
Red,
Walker
blue,
Blue. What's the middle one? Black. Black.
Black label. Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah.
Red is the
Dang.
low one,
I think red
and
is bottom tier. Yeah,
yeah, it's the black.
yeah. Oh yeah. No, I just
Oh,
the entire time, man. I was just. Hey, sorry, I'm at Kahala Mall right now because my friend works
really?
the overnight security here,
Yeah.
and after dinner, so my friends and I grab dinner, and then after dinner we come here, we talk story,
Mm.
and I was like, well, you know what? I'll celebrate this one. So that's the two cigars, and then that was it, man.
Yeah.
Great time.
Yeah.
But yeah, no,
Yeah. Hey.
thanks for doing this, and definitely taking time out of your day, man. A whole hour and a half.
Oh, really? Is that how long?
That was about something like that, yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Well, once I get
But
going,
yeah,
I talk. But yeah. All right.
all right, man. Take care.
Hey,
Have a good one.
have fun. Yeah.